Okay, so The Atlantic, their January/February 2024 issue, has 24 contributors. 24 contributors considering what Donald Trump could do if he were to return to the White House. His second term, they conclude, you'll be shocked to learn, would be much worse than the first term. Now, that may be true. However, it's no surprise that Jeffrey Goldberg's Atlantic is saying it will be. Trust us, all while trying to tell us that they are a nonpartisan magazine. Here's just a little. It's not a sure thing that he could win the Republican nomination again, but as I write this, he's the prohibitive frontrunner, which is why we felt it necessary to share with our readers our collective understanding of what could take place in a second Trump term. I encourage you to read all of the articles in this special issue carefully, though perhaps not in one sitting, for reasons of mental hygiene. Okay, but it's not a partisan magazine. You got it? Our term of brilliant writers makes a convincingly dispositive case that both Trump and Trumpism pose an existential threat to America and the ideas that animate it. The concern is that the Republican Party has mortgaged itself to an anti-democratic demagogue, one who is completely devoid of decency. Now, these are points that you could read from a lot of Republicans who don't like Trump, but this is what we're in for the next, 15, I don't want to do the math, months. If one of these guys on stage tomorrow night does not unseat Trump in this nomination, it's the ratcheting up of rhetoric. I mean, they've already thrown out terms like Hitler. And Charles, I know you don't like Trump, but you know that it's going to go so sky high on the rhetoric. It's going to try to scare people. And I really do think, we're going to be in a world of hurt. We're going to be looking at riots if Trump were to win, but even in the next year, and maybe even from the MAGA right, if Trump is convicted, if he's thrown in jail, like this, all of this is at stake in some way here in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, so as you said, I don't like Trump, that's correct, and I think he should have been impeached. But that doesn't mean every criticism that is advanced against him is correct. And I think one of the problems in reading through some of the essays in The Atlantic, which I did yesterday, is that the authors, they make three mistakes as far as I can see. The first one is they level their criticisms of Trump, many of which are true, but they then glue them to policy preferences. For example, McKay Coppins wrote an essay in which he suggested that Trump's desire to have people around him who are willing to implement his agenda is somehow sinister. That Trump's desire to be able to fire people within the executive branch that he heads up, of which he's the only elected member as a president, is sinister. That is false. We need to keep our criticisms of Trump, and I have many within the right frame. The second thing is there is a profound inability on the left, and you see this in the Atlantic's package, to reckon with the anti-democratic or illiberal behavior of their own friends. And we have seen this with Biden over and over again. Biden has ignored the Supreme Court. He has ignored his own lawyers who have told him his behavior is illiberal. He's reversed himself on court packing, on the filibuster. He has tried to stage a federal takeover of elections. This is not a purely Republican problem, and yet there's nothing in there about that because it is apparently only the case that Donald Trump is a threat. And then the third problem I have is, while I think that Trump has disqualified himself from consideration and should have been impeached, I think that our system works. Trump did not succeed after he lost the election in staying in power. The vast majority of Trump's initiatives in office that went beyond his authority under the Constitution or the law were swatted down. He's not Hitler because America is not Germany. And this is a problem that I have with progressives in general, is that they simultaneously describe figures such as Donald Trump as Hitler while trying to get rid of the guardrails in our system that prevent anyone from pushing it too far. All of the institutions that checked Trump, as they've checked Biden and Obama and Bush and everyone else, are anathemic to progressives and have been since the time of Woodrow Wilson. So I find it very, very odd that you get this sort of hyperbole at the same time as the one thing that prevents it from becoming a reality remain under attack from the same people who write the hyperbolic statements.
You know, to that point, so true, Charles. To that point, some of the things that they're predicting under, a Trump presidency, MBD, the things that are really upsetting some on the left in these think pieces that we're starting to get now is the following. I'll give you a couple this is from the New York Times, the radical agenda that we can expect from President Trump. He'll reevaluate NATO's purpose and mission. He's reevaluating. He'll order the military to attack the drug cartels in Mexico. He'll use the military on domestic soil to keep law and order. He'll purge undocumented workers. He'll expand presidential power. Okay, to the point Charles just made. He's going to be the culprit who does that. And here's the last one. This is the best. MBD, they are very concerned at the New York Times that Trump would use the Justice Department to wreak vengeance against his adversaries in a naked challenge to democratic values. Who would ever do that?
Were they alive during the first Trump administration? I ask seriously because I remember the first Trump administration, and the problem was that half the time Trump wasn't president. Trump would go out, he would tweet something like, "We're putting a ban on transgender persons serving in the U.S. military." And then the Pentagon would announce, "We're providing services for transgender persons serving in the military." Trump would announce, "We're withdrawing all troops from Syria." And then the White House, quote unquote, would announce weeks later, "Actually, we're putting 300 more troops into Syria." When Trump was in the White House, everyone knew Trump kind of wanted to reopen the country in the early months of COVID. He talked about reopening by Easter. But no, Dr. Fauci decided the terms on which most Americans would live. And the implicit threat was, and you better elect someone else other than Donald Trump, or we'll keep you locked up after the election. Mm-hmm. This was not a subtle threat. And so to me, the problem is not that Trump was a dictator. The problem was Trump was hardly in charge at all after 2016. And that kind of lack of oversight by him and lack of control through the White House is a danger, but it's the exact opposite danger of what they're warning against. And so I just don't know what planet they're living on. Robert Kagan wrote a similar op-ed in the Washington Post saying the chances of a Trump dictatorship are rising and we have to pay attention to it. A dictatorship? I mean, the guy could not dictate to his own chief of staff at the White House without being undermined. That was the problem, and it's going to continue being a problem going forward. I mean, like you both said, I mean, if Trump is elected again, I expect not only will Congress check him, as they did before, they didn't pass all of the MAGA agenda, they passed the agenda that Paul Ryan was ready to pass. The courts, they blocked his immigration orders, sometimes under pretty shoddy legal reasoning. They gummed up the works. But worst of all was that the executive branch itself was in rebellion against the president. And that's a serious problem. And I don't know if Trump is the one to, lead a kind of draining of the swamp, like he said, because he was swallowed by it in his first term.
We are sponsored today by Donors Trust, the principled, tax-friendly way to simplify your charitable giving. So many of my viewers have been shocked at the hateful pro-Hamas protests on America's college campuses. If there is any upside to this, it's that many donors are finally pulling their support from these ivory towers. If you're one of them, now the question is, what do you do with your charitable dollars? You should know about Donors Trust. Donors Trust is the oldest and largest donor-advised fund committed to limited government, personal responsibility, and free enterprise. With a giving fund at Donors Trust, you'll have a simpler, tax-friendly way to do your charitable giving. You'll also have a partner who will make sure your gifts stay true to your conservative values. The end of the year is coming fast. Open your fund before the end of December to take advantage of tax savings. Visit donors, there's an S in there, trust.org/MK to see how a fund works and request your free starter kit. Protect and simplify your charitable giving with Donors Trust. Visit donorstrust.org/MK to get started. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.